Good morning. I was smiling as I was sitting here because I was thinking about how the universe is, how spirit has a sense of humor. Anytime we start to focus on any one thing, or any one issue, or any one healing topic, the universe always gives us an opportunity to go deeper with it. I am pretty attached to a handheld mic, and when I got here this morning and Glenn told me I had to use this, I just got real freaked out. So as I was sitting there thinking how resistant I was feeling to having to wear this contraption, then I had to smile because I thought, the theme this month is surrender. God just gave me an opportunity to surrender deeper, go deeper in my soul. Yes, to go deeper. So I'm adjusting to having this on and not having my security blanket in my hand, just so that you'll know what's happening up here. My mind is on another track altogether. So I'm going to invite you to just take a deep breath with me as I release my attachment to the handheld. And we'll take another deep breath together. And then we do a third one for good measure. You know, a young woman once said to Hafiz, the great Sufi master, Hafiz, what is the sign of someone who knows God? And Hafiz became silent for a long time, and he looked her deeply in the eye, and he said, my dear, they've dropped the knife. Someone who knows God has dropped the cruel knife that they so often use against themselves and others. Someone who knows God has dropped the cruel knife that they so often use against their tender self. That's what he said, their tender self and others. And you know, that is so meaningful when you start to think about surrender, because dropping the knife is surrender, a form of surrender. My favorite definition of surrender is agreeing not to fight. We agree not to fight. When we drop the knife, we agree not to fight. When we drop the knife, we're surrendering. The theme this month is surrender. My topic today is surrender to forgiveness. When we drop the knife, we're surrendering, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we get directly to forgiveness. We're agreeing not to fight, but we're not at forgiveness yet. We've dropped the knife. And where that has gotten us to is willingness. It has gotten us to willingness. It has gotten us to the place of being willing not to fight, to the place of being willing to maybe even consider forgiveness. It gets us to willingness. Willingness is a quality or a state of preparing to do something. Willingness is a state of preparation. It's sort of a readiness. Willingness is like opening a door. Willingness helps us to open the door to our hearts. And when we open the door to our hearts, that's where God can work, through an open heart. God can work for us through our willingness. And so when we drop the knife and we surrender just to willingness, we're getting to that place where we can start to know God. Because our knives, we each carry different kinds. You know, there's a paring knife and a butcher knife and a hunting knife and all kinds of knives. I don't know why I started off on that. But there are all kinds of knives. And we call our knives in the spiritual world anger, judgment, blame, shame, guilt, regrets, all that stuff. Those are the knives that we hold on to. And when we're holding those knives, we're blocking the free flow of spirit. We're blocking our opportunity to be at one with spirit. We're blocking our opportunity to experience the free flow of life, the free flow of love. And so when we're blocking, there's no way for us to know God. You know, I sincerely believe that the only thing that ever needs to be healed is our sense of separation from God. The only thing that ever needs to be healed is our sense of separation from God. The only thing that ever needs to be healed is our sense of separation from God. And notice I say our sense of separation from God because we can never be separate from God. We are one with God. We are made in the image and likeness and out of God itself. We can never be separate, but if we think we are separate, if we are sensing into separation, then we act like we are separate. And when we act like we are separate, then we start to move into those separation things that we get into, those separation corners. We start to separate from each other. We start to separate from ourselves. We move into them and us corners. And when we look around the world today at all the divisiveness that there is, all the stuff that's going on, all the anger, all the competition, all the stuff that's going on, we recognize how much separation, how much of a sense of separation there is. But you know what? We can never be separate from each other because we are all a part of the one. We're all a part of the only thing that is. We're all a part of the only life. We're all a part of the only presence. We're all a part of the only mind. The only activity is God. And when we start to look at getting to know God, it moves us to the second step of treatment, that unification step. You know, we recognize God all the time. We recognize there's only one life, there's only one mind, there's only one presence, there's only one breath, there's only one activity. We know all that. We can spout that off. But then when we start to say, that life is perfect, that life is whole, that life is complete, and that life is my life now, that is the step that takes us into that place where we know God. But when we're holding on to the knife, whatever our knife may be, it's pretty hard for us to get into that place where we know God. It's hard for us to get into that place because there's something blocking. There's something blocking. And so we have to be willing to drop the knife. We have to be willing to let it go. I had to be willing to give up the mic so that I could just take a breath and I could step back and I could be in this place of spirit, be in this place of oneness, be in this place of knowing and sensing and feeling God's presence right here and right now. And that's where we all want to be, in that place where we can know God. So when we get into looking at how we get from willingness to forgiveness, there are certain things that we have to logically follow along with. The first step, is setting our intention to forgive. Everything begins with intention. Everything begins with intention. Intention, the power is in intention. Intention drives behavior. Intention informs our behavior. Intention informs our actions. We set our intention and then our behavior follows our intention. Pretty simple, huh? We set our intention because without our intention, we get caught up in all different kinds of distractions. We get caught up in situations and circumstances and events and all that stuff. But when we set our intention, and sometimes we have to set our intention over and over and over and over and over and over again. We have to do that over and over and over again. But you know what keeps it going like that is our attention. It is our attention that is equally as important as our intention, because our attention keeps us focused on what our intention is. So we set our intention and then we pay attention to our intention. Because if we don't pay attention to our intention, we can go off on a little course on our own, just off on a little journey ourselves. And our intention is over here, we are all the way down there. It's sort of like me going to Costco. I can go in Costco and say I'm going to get one thing. Now that's funny in itself. That's funny in itself. I'm going to run in Costco and get some eggs, and that's it. And as soon as I pass the door and show the man my card, I lose my mind. I get in there and I say, oh, the TVs. Oh my gosh, here's cookies. Oh my gosh, look at the summer furniture, patio furniture is out. Oh, new jeans. Somebody has a demonstration that they're showing you over here. And I haven't gotten 100 feet in there yet. And already, I've lost my mind. I don't know what happened to my intention. My attention got caught up with all the stuff, all the distractions. And when we get caught up like that, the intention is just sitting there. The intention is just sitting there. Because energy goes where attention flows. Energy flows where attention goes. So wherever our attention goes, that's where our energy goes. And if our attention goes over here, our energy goes there. If our attention goes over here, our energy goes there. That's just the way it works. So if we can keep our attention on our intention, and for me, stay out of Costco's if I just want to do one thing, unless I set my intention to just go in there and just saunter around and try out all the samples and look at I'll go down every aisle and do all that. Otherwise, if I'm going in there for one thing, I have to keep my attention on my intention. And I know exactly where the eggs are. Walk and not look right nor left, just keep going to where I said I was going to go. I'm almost as bad going in Trader Joe's. But I know that if I can stay focused when I walk through the door and keep my attention on my intention to get that one thing, then things go along just as I had planned. And that's the way it is with forgiveness. We set our intention to forgive. But we're in bodies on this planet, and so stuff comes up all the time. We interact with each other, we interact with people that we don't know. We drive down the freeway, somebody cuts us off, or down the street, somebody cuts us off. Whatever happens, a thought goes through your mind that really ticks you off. Whatever the case may be, something distracts us. And if we aren't mindful and paying attention to our intention, we just start right on off with that thought, with that person who ticked us off, with the boss, with the spouse, with the kids, with the whatever, you name it. Distractions come in all disguises. And so our attention can get caught up with distractions unless we stay mindful and really, really, really pay attention to our intention. And if our intention is to forgive, then we will start to take steps with regard to forgiving, releasing, letting go of judgment, letting go of anger, letting go of blame, letting go of whatever, guilt, shame, whatever it may be, dropping the knife, whatever our knife may be at any given moment, and they change up. It just depends. And so after we set our intention, the second thing we want to do is to start to practice forgiveness daily. Practice forgiveness daily. That requires us to be mindful, again, of our intention, but also making forgiveness a part of our regular daily spiritual practice. We know this. We know the drill for spiritual practice. Usually prayer, usually meditation, journaling, reading, yoga, whatever your spiritual practice may be. But it may not include forgiveness on a daily basis. Oftentimes we don't think about forgiveness on a daily basis. We think, oh, well, I'll do that at a special time, or I'll do that at some other time. Martin Luther King said that forgiveness must not be an occasional act, but a permanent attitude. It must not be an occasional act, but a permanent attitude. Not an occasional act, but a permanent attitude. And it can't be a permanent attitude if we do it every now and then, or just about the big things, and we don't recognize that there are little things that happen all the time, little offenses, little things that tick us off, little things we hear on TV, little whatever, that help to close our hearts. And those are the things that keep us out of that place where forgiveness can be a permanent attitude in our lives. So making sure that we make forgiveness and practice forgiveness daily, making it a regular part of our spiritual practice, just like prayer and meditation. And I'm thinking of Marianne Williamson wrote If we meditate, sometimes but not always, then we feel like we get God's help sometimes but not always. If we pray and meditate, some days but not all days, we get to experience the peace of God some days but not all days. If we only go to God when we're in trouble, then it feels like God's help is inconsistent when the inconsistency lies within us. The more we go to God, the more time we spend with God, the more we develop our spiritual musculature, and the stronger we become in being able to deal with life's challenges. And to that, I'd like to add, the more we practice forgiveness, the freer we are, the more open our hearts are, the more we are able to move into oneness with God, the more we're able to move into alignment with God, the more we're able to move into alignment with forgiveness itself. Because God is not only forgiving, God is forgiveness. God is the thing itself. Forgiveness. And that's what we want to be, forgiveness itself. That's what we want to develop, a heart that is so open and so free that we are forgiveness. When you see me, you see forgiveness. But that takes practice over and over and over again. So practicing forgiveness daily is very important for us. Making it a permanent attitude. I call it also living in an atmosphere of forgiveness. We walk around with it always on our minds. When we practice it daily, we wake up with forgiveness on our minds. We go to bed at night and run through your day and just start to forgive people. Forgive things that happened. Forgive people for things that they did, for whatever. And forgiving yourself, very importantly. And then when you wake up in the morning, you got a clean slate because you practice forgiveness on your way to sleep. And then when you wake up in the morning, you set your intention to forgive. You set your intention to forgive, and then you start your day with your attention on your intention, and then you go through your day. And that's how you get to practice forgiveness daily. Practicing it daily. The third thing is, Michael Beckwith, in his book, Spiritual Liberation, wrote that evolved people race to see who can be the first to forgive. Evolved people race to see who can be the first to forgive. And when we can forgive quickly, we don't have time for all that stuff to set up. We don't have time to pick up the knife. And sometimes those knives are something, because you can drop the knife and before you know it, it's in your hand again. It's in your hand again. How did it get there? It's like it just jumps up. But we race to put it down. We race to be the first to forgive. And that reminds me of there's a school, well, there's several of them now, elementary schools in Baltimore, where the children come in the mornings, as soon as they get off their buses and get into the building, the first thing they do, they go into what's called a mindfulness practice. And they come in, and for the first 15 minutes, they meditate, they do breathing exercises, they do yoga. And these are kids in schools that are in the most underprivileged communities, the communities with the highest crime, the most impoverished communities. These children are brought in, and they go right into these rooms. They do breathing exercises, as I said, they do meditation every morning. When they then go about their day, if any of them get into a fight or to an argument or whatever, they aren't sent to the principal's office, they're sent to the mindful me room, where they have to go in there, in that meditation room, and work it out between them. Whatever, they talk it out, they listen to each other, they see where each of them was wrong or the other, whatever, they do apologies, whatever it is they do, and then they do their meditation. The principal said that the first school that started this, the principal said that they were now at 0 suspensions. And this particular school had the highest suspension rate. But this is elementary school. She said they have 0 suspensions because the kids go into the mindful me room and they work it out. They don't come to the principal's office anymore. Could we do that for our legislators? Could we do that for just people we know in general? Could we do that for ourselves? Could we do that for our families? Could we do that for our friends? Could we do that in our lives? It's just take ourselves into the mindful me place. Take yourself into your meditation chair. Take yourself into your prayer chair. Take yourself into your place where you can let all that stuff go, drop the knife, and move into alignment with the all that is. Move into alignment with that which is the truth of your being. Move into that place where we know that God resides always. Always. And we can move into that place more easily as we continue to see, can I be the first one to forgive? Because sometimes we don't, if we're dealing with somebody else, we get upset and he was wrong and she was wrong. Well, I'm not going to forgive first. But you know what? Forgiveness is for us. If you don't remember anything else, that's how I start my classes. Forgiveness is for you. If you don't remember anything else about forgiveness, you aren't doing anything for anybody else. You're doing it for you. You're doing it to free your own heart. You're doing it to keep open the door to your heart. Howard Thurman has an essay that keep open the door to thy heart. When the door to your heart is open, it doesn't matter how many doors are closed against you. Because there's nothing you can do to keep me from loving you. So keeping open the door to our heart is so important. Because when we have the door to our hearts open, then we can be filled with God. Because our whole purpose for being here is to love. Our whole purpose for being here is to be revealers of God's love. To be revealers of God's love. We're to be the vehicles for God's love to be expressed into this universe. And it can't be expressed through a closed heart. And so for us to open our hearts as much as we possibly can, by forgiving others, forgiving ourselves, opening ourselves to another's forgiveness, these are the things that keep our hearts open. These are the things that give us opportunity to grow and to expand and to be all that we were created to be. And so racing to see if we can be the first to forgive. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Do it yourself first. See if you can beat them to it. See if you can be like those kids in the Baltimore schools. And now I looked for an update on that story recently, and I see that there are over 4,000 children who have experienced this program in the schools in Baltimore. This program was started by two brothers who just wanted something for these kids, something to give them an opportunity to have a better life as they grow up, even though they weren't getting it in their communities. What an awesome thing. What an awesome thing. Let's take a breath together. The last thing about getting to forgiveness is to do what I call, remember the rubber band principle. It takes courage to forgive. It takes courage to drop the knife. It takes courage to let go of our anger, to let go of our judgment, to let go of our blame, to let go of our shame, to let go of our guilt. And we sometimes hold on to it so long that it becomes a comfort zone for us. This rubber band is real comfortable right here. It's not doing anything, but it's comfortable. And it does not start to fulfill its purpose until it starts to stretch. When it starts to stretch, it is fulfilling its purpose for being here. When we start to stretch, like the rubber band, we start to fulfill our purpose for being here, because it takes a stretch for us to forgive. It takes a stretch for us not to be angry sometimes. It takes a stretch, and particularly with some people, every time they open up their mouths, it makes you angry. And so what you have to do is take a deep breath and stretch. And if you notice, I wore more than one rubber band on my wrist just in case I pop one. Because sometimes we have to stretch. Maya Angelou says that the definition of courage, courage is the power to let go of the familiar. The power to let go of the familiar. She says, courage is the power to let go of the familiar. This is familiar. Anger can be familiar. Judgment can be familiar. Blame can be familiar. Regrets can be familiar. All that stuff can be familiar. But it takes courage to let it go so that we can stretch and drop that knife. We can stretch to become all that we were created to be. We can stretch so that we can become those revealers of love that we were created to be. We can stretch so that we can be that place and space through which God can express itself fully and completely. God has a special way to express as you, as you, as you, as me, as you, as all of us, according to our own uniqueness. And our own uniqueness can't come through when it's blocked by stuff. When we're sitting in this little comfort zone, holding a grudge, being resentful, being ashamed, afraid to forgive, because I'm not going to let him off the hook that easily. When it's you on the hook, it's you holding the knife. It's you holding the knife that you use against yourself, against myself, and against others. And so I invite you to drop the knife and surrender not only to willingness, surrender to forgiveness. One thing I want to say about willingness, sometimes, depending on what the event may be, what may have happened, or what's happening with the person, or whether it's on an ongoing basis, the offense that happens, sometimes we can just be willing to be willing. To be willing. To be willing. To be willing to be willing. That's as far as we can get. But you know, every time you start willing to be willing to be willing, you're going deeper and deeper. To be willing to be willing. Somewhere underneath all of that is forgiveness. And if you can just do a little bit at a time and just tick off one of those willingness, or one of those willings, being willing to be willing, just keep working at it, be willing. Setting your intention to be willing. And use as many willings as you need to use. And most of all, in all of this, trust God. Trust God. Trust God to guide us through this time. Trust God to see us through this time. Trust God to always be with us through this time. Trust God more than you trust anyone or anything else. Trust God more than the news media. Trust God more than the doctor. Trust God more than everything and anything. Trust God in all things, in everything. And know that God is always God. This is what Ernest Holmes says. God is always God, no matter what our emotional storm or what our objective situation may be. God is always God, no matter what our emotional storm or what our objective situation may be. I'm going to say that again. God is always God. God is always God, no matter what our emotional storm or objective situation may be. So it doesn't matter what may be going on in your life. It doesn't matter what may be going on in your world. It doesn't matter how many times someone offends you. It doesn't matter how many times you offend someone else. Trust in God that you can just do it over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. That we can dance. We can laugh. We can be free. We can have fun. We can live our lives fully. We can live and be at one with the allness and the fullness of God. Because God is ever present right where we are. God is always available. Forgiveness is always available. Because I don't care how bad something may be, how wrong something may be, how terrible something may be, only you can make an act unforgivable. Only you can make an act unforgivable. I don't care what it is. only you can make that act unforgivable, because only you can forgive it. Only you can forgive that person. So forgiveness is a choice. It is a choice. Choice is one of the greatest gifts God gave us. Choice, the power to choose. You can choose forgiveness in any moment. In any moment. Unforgiveness blocks. Unforgiveness isolates. Unforgiveness separates. Forgiveness dissolves the blocks. So I invite you to choose forgiveness. This day, in this moment. So why don't we take a deep breath together and just silently to yourself, and maybe not so silently, just say, I choose forgiveness. Today, I choose forgiveness. Take a breath. Today, I choose forgiveness. And now I'd like you to just take another deep breath and just allow the image of one person that you may be holding a grudge or resentment or anger or blame or something against. Allow their face to just come into your mind. Take a deep breath, because this is in your own mind. And just say silently to them, I forgive you. For all the harm you've caused, I forgive you. Take a breath. Say, I forgive you. And now take another breath. And just allow the face of someone that you may have caused harm, someone you may have hurt, to come before you. Take a breath. And say, please forgive me for harm I may have caused you. Please forgive me. Take a breath. Please forgive me. Now just allow that person's face to just fade away as you take another breath. And turn your attention into your heart space, your own heart space. Breathe in and breathe out. Feel yourself. Feel your heart space. Feel your own energy. Now take a breath and silently call yourself by name. And say, I forgive you. Take a breath. Call yourself by your own name and say, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. Now just take a breath and allow yourself to rest in that space. As we just move into this time of prayer. Just moving into that place where I'm just knowing and sensing and feeling the presence of God right here, right now, right where I am. Just knowing that there's but one power, knowing that there's but one presence, there's but one mind, there's but one life. I choose to call it God, but by any other name, it is the same. The source of our being. And I'm just knowing that this one life, this oneness, this allness that is God, this oneness that is God is my very life. And I know that it is the life of each one of us here this day. This life is ever present. It undergirds everything. It is in and through everything. So knowing this truth, I speak this word for each of us this day. Speaking a word of healing. Knowing that we are healing our sense of separation from God, for we can never be separate from it. It is always right where we are, for it is us. And So we just move into that place of releasing and letting go of anything that would block, dropping the knife today, allowing anger to be dissolved, resentment, grudges, blame, shame, regrets, guilt. Whatever it is we may be holding on to, whatever we name it, it's the same. It's a resistance, it's blocks, attachments to anything and anyone. We release all that, old habits, old patterns, old beliefs, old ways of being in the world. Releasing who we think we are. And just open ourselves up to be all that we were created to be. Opening ourselves up to be that open space, that open channel through which God can express fully and completely as each one of us, however God wants to express according to its own uniqueness, our own uniqueness. And as we open up, we are filled with peace and joy and love and harmony and balance. We are filled with forgiveness. We're filled with abundance and prosperity. Perfect health and wholeness. We are filled with the qualities of God. We are filled with compassion. For as we move through forgiveness, our hearts are open and we are more able to get to compassion, where we are looking at life and looking at each other through softer eyes, through an open heart, through the eyes of forgiveness. How awesome it is to experience this healing. How awesome it is to experience this truth. How awesome it is to experience this oneness with the all that is. How awesome it is to experience forgiveness, surrender, letting go, freedom. And so I just say thank you, Father, Mother, God. Thank you, infinite presence. Thank you, Divine Mother. I send a word of blessing out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day. Just knowing that in the midst of everything, God is. As I open this circle of prayer, I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may speak their names silently or not aloud, but you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names are spoken here this day, I'm just knowing that God is right in the midst of everything going on. God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them, loving them, lifting them up. This prayer goes out to this entire planet, knowing that God is everywhere present, and that we learn to see God everywhere. I bless Reverend Jill right where she is, knowing that God is blessing and keeping her and lifting her up. She travels safely to and fro, just as we all travel safely to and fro. Thank you, God. I just allow it to be now. And so it is.